So joining me is Bryan, Global Chief Sustainability Officer at and Mediabrands. Jean-Marc Papin, SVP in Media Technology and Data at Horizon. Krystal Olivieri, Global Chief Innovation Officer at GroupM and Choreograph. And Yale Cohen, EVP Global Digital Standards at Publicis Media. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
So we'll start off, where a lot of things start for agencies, which is with your clients. Have they been asking for better sustainability in media? Are you starting those conversations? What is the education process looking like? We'll start with you, Martin.
Absolutely. We got some clients in the room here today, which is, I think, a testament to what Bryan was just hearkening to, which is folks are paying attention to this because we're getting more data. We're understanding the impact. And I think that that's really where it begins, is having the information and recognizing that there is a pretty quick path to reduction with our supply chain, right? When you look at our clients and the complexity of their supply chains, they're dealing with a very different set of variables often that requires them to make significant investments, that this, in fact, can be a savings for them. So that's, I think, really where we're starting to hear clients come to us. But conversely, we're also, of course, bringing the solutions to them. So this is something that, again, it's relatively nascent, but it's, testament here in this room, all you beautiful people, to the fact that this is something that's really picking up steam very quickly. Clients, agencies, all of us are coming to the table.
How much of a learning curve is there when it comes to education?
I can take it? Yeah, sure. I think there's a pretty big learning curve. A few years ago, I don't think many people, and definitely including all of us in this room, really understood the full impact of, I still actually don't know if we understand the full impact of the carbon emissions coming off of the media supply chain. So we've really been focusing on, with our clients, starting with helping to contextualize what are the different value chain paths across the media supply chain, across each channel, and then what are the inputs that could be driving it. It's really easy to show that. Well, it actually was really difficult to build that, but then once we got it on one side, it's kind of easy to digest. But then starting to figure out, well, okay, how do I get that piece of information, or how is a vendor going to be able to give me that? How am I going to calculate that? It's like the steps in the process. So it starts with just framing the problem, which has been hard. But now that we have a really big lean in, I will agree with Martin, clients are really eager. Clients are acting in a pretty competitive manner. We have clients in the same vertical that are getting together with us to talk about this, to try to solve it together, which has been really great. But it's figuring out how to get the data. Now they understand the problem, the education comes into how do we work together to move the industry forward collectively, to be able to get the data that we need from vendors one time and be able to actually operationalize it. And so it's a lot of different learning curves in there. But it feels like we're all aligned on the fact that there's a challenge, and that it's a challenge that we can actually address and collectively solve for.
So, I think, Krystal, you have a great point here. And when you talk about education, it's also about transformation, right? And my background is management consulting, and changing organizations is very difficult. It's about changing your business processes, about changing your systems. How you have accounting, carbon credit in media media management system. You see how it can be a challenge, right? It's also about changing about how you hire your people, right? And actually that's what's interesting, and we see in our younger talents, they are looking at that parameter. And this is what we have to answer those questions too, because this is about a different way to do business. That has to be part of everything we do. And when we have to deal with that transformation with people who have been in that industry for many, many years, operating in let's say not the same way, because it's evolving all the time. Every year there is something new in that industry, right? But it's also, each time you have to do those changes. And it has to be very, very deep, changing each of individual, depending on where they belong in the organization, because this is typically fragmented by channels. People from local TV are very different from people from programmatic and radio and social. They talk to each other, but they are very different, and they have very different expectations from their clients as well.
I would say from how we talk to clients, we're actually further behind in the US just because of regulatory issues than a lot of our clients in EMEA. And part of that is education, but part of that is just like general awareness of like how to actually become more sustainable and like the pressures that they face as an organization. So we started this journey back in 2017 to measure carbon, and every year like the amount of clients that are starting to measure it actually is like growing at an exponential rate. And then the usage of that data is just like phenomenal, like how clients become like, how they use it for production or creative, how they use it in media. So like the holistic story is now, I feel like, starting to come together. But you see pockets of areas where there's still opportunities to lean in and digest in a way that's progressive for the industry.
Do you think that companies should have to publicly disclose their carbon emissions?
Absolutely.
Yes.
For sure.
Yep.
I mean, even the agencies on the panel are doing that too. Not just our brands, but us and doing it and living it.
Okay.
It's accountability, right? At the end of the day, if you're not reporting and it's not consistent as well, and again, that's going to be, I know we're going to talk a lot about the consistency of data that's required. That's why we must, and sorry, Bryan, I disagree humbly with you, pre-competitive. We've got to be pre-competitive with this industry and the approach to measurement. We will win on strategy, of course, but we will not win on measurement. Measurement just must be consistent across the board
Yes.
for reporting.
Thank you for saying that, because we cannot manage what we can't measure, and we can't all create different solutions. We need one way of measuring, because a lot of times right now what's happening is a lot of vendors are also popping up. Everyone has green solutions. And we're like, well, why is your solution green? Like, can you help us understand? Because it's also one thing to just say, like, this is my carbon emissions, but there needs to be transparency in how you're getting to that number or how you're getting to that output, yeah.
Yeah, and I think, sorry, I think there is a chicken and egg situation here, right? I mean, you talked about data, right? And I think we all have an idea about where we want to go, right? SBTI, I mean, sustainability-based standard, right? Science-based, standard seems to be a standard framework, but it's also about having the technology to do that, right? We can have a goal saying, hey, we want to measure things this way with those standards, and having a certain way to recognize, having to account for carbon credit or to measure, but at the same time, if we don't have the technology for it, it's a challenge. So we have to work in parallel. I mean, I think Bryan explained very well how we work, but we have to work in parallel with those two aspects of knowing where we want to go, agree on the standards, and then follow the technology as much as we can or be ahead of it.
Krystal, you also said something that got me very excited, which is, can we please stop bugging the shit out of our partners by asking them 10 different ways to Sunday the same damn questions? We need one RFI, one consistent approach so that we get the same shared data, right?
I completely agree. I think a lot of us have been talking actually behind the scenes too. This is like, we are also taking it to heart that we want to be pre-competitive. We need a standard. So like we went out and did this like a year and a half ago with a Big Four consultancy. What we have is a really detailed set of questions. And we've given it to different trade bodies, and we're at the point where we're sort of like waiting for someone to pick up the reins and tell us, we agree with this, we don't agree with this, we like this, we don't like this. Let's all align to it. That way our partners only have to respond to it once. They don't have to go figure out why my questions are like slightly different than his questions. And it will remove the barrier, because right now I can empathize with why partners are going to say, I don't know if I can give you this data right now, because if I set the precedent of giving it to you like this, am I setting the precedent for each holding company? Am I setting the precedent for each brand? And that becomes the challenge, is it's not feasible to operationalize for them either. And that is a point of empathy that we definitely have, which is why we're like, we have to get aligned as an industry.
I would say, for sustainability, yes, I agree with that. But there's also like this really interesting dynamic where sustainability is interacting with other differences, like or other metrics in the industry, like DE&I or privacy. And if we get to a similar consistency in an RFI for sustainability and metrics or standards of how to achieve that, then we should also understand how that impacts other types of data sets, and I think that's where like there's nuances on a brand level, maybe not on a holding company, but on each brand and making those decisions for themselves.
I definitely agree with that. We have different brands that have different areas that they care about more or less. And I think one of the things that scares me the most sometimes about sustainability is you can actually have really detrimental unintended consequences to other commitments that you've made to other parts of your sort of responsibility initiatives. But that's where the secret sauce comes in too. That's where the clients get to control. If we just have the common data points, it's where everyone gets to control, hopefully, their destiny.
So we know that we need the commonality in the data points, but what does it actually look like to get there? And who do you think should be in charge of that? I feel like that's where one of the big issues comes in is, one agency comes up with a solution and the other agency doesn't want to use it because it's that agency's solution. So how do we work through that?
There's so many different, I would say from a technical perspective, like how you actually measure that actually can be standardized across the industry, and then it's enacting that from technology companies like Scope or Impact. And then you're using fundamentally the same type of data, so it should be consistent across clients, across agencies, across holding companies, and then it's how you ingest that, how you work with clients on sharing that is the differentiation of one client and agency to another. I don't think anyone on the stage wants to get to a unique methodology to calculate carbon.
No.
Please no.
So I think we're all aligned on that one. It's just how you use the data and fundamentally, but working with different partners on executing is how you create differentiators and partnerships, et cetera.
And I think we've been looking toward the trade bodies. So we've been working with all of the trade bodies, and I know a lot of us have been having those conversations. And I think ultimately as an industry, and we're feeling it with our clients, we just want to move faster than we have and get to a place where we're not letting perfection be the enemy of good. And we're just starting somewhere collectively and then iterating from there.
Yeah, I think I completely agree with that, because that today it's very difficult to. It's really emerging. I mean, it's been mentioned this morning, right? A year ago, it was just an idea. I mean, I went to Cannes last year. There was like a few panels talking about this. Today, like there is like every media event, there are people talking about it. So we have to test and learn, and we can be wrong. I mean, we have been a few months in the business of this, right? And our clients too. And I think, I mean, Vivian was one of the first person this morning, right, from Clorox, and she was saying, hey, we also expect our agency to help us, help us understand how it works for the media side. And that's what we are investigating, and that we have to start doing that test and learn with our clients and get and learn from them, because they are more advanced in their business. Because I mean, like someone doing chemical product, they know they have been in the carbon industry for a long time. That's their core business actually. So that's really where also we have to have that collaboration, and really that I don't know how to call that, like that merge with our client and and operate that test and learn.
It is the client expectation too that we're going to move with haste on this. I think the thing I would just want to reiterate is the urgency that we need to get to that common vernacular, that common shared language to speak about this, so that we can work towards reduction. Because again, we can quickly decarbonize our industry, but we need to have that common language to do that. And I think, Add Net Zero, IAB Tech Labs, we're going to be hearing from them shortly. We've got all of the data and the tools and the mechanisms. We just have to come together, guys, pre-competitively and align on it quickly.
I would disagree that we can decarbonize the entire industry. I don't think fundamentally like everything is like you can remove everything, but I do think you can reduce like the shit out of everything, right? And you can measure everything. You can figure out where you want to go. I think too much I see where a brand or even our agencies just want to get to like, let's get to zero. And I think that's fundamentally without like jumping to offsetting and everything. Like you want to get to a place where you're actually a real consistent and sustainable process to actually get you to a place where you can actually help the brand and agencies like come along in a complete journey. Because it's not like a short-term journey. It's like the goals are 2020, 2030, 2040. So how do you get to a place where it's actually a sustainable process as well?
Well, we were talking about this before the panel, this idea of neutral versus zero as well.
Yeah.
Like what a complicated, industry now we're in. And I think that's really where neutral is not the ideal. Like neutral should not be the objective. Buying carbon offset should just be the last thing that you possibly do in order to get you that 10% over the hump to get to SBTI compliance. That's it. When it comes to reduction, absolutely agree with you. It's painful, probably. We're going to pretend like it's a lot easier than it is because we want to see it rapidly happening, but absolutely agree it's going to take time. But again, we're here to support that. And I think that's where each of our agencies and our holding companies are working with our partners because we believe that this is something that will require investment, will require time, will require collaboration, but we got to do it.
Yeah, the one piece on that I would definitely build for, because I completely agree, is going back to that speed piece, because you're right. Goals are 2030, 2040. I think when we work really closely with Bryan, there are really quick things that can happen really fast if you have a way to measure it and understand what factors are driving carbon emissions. And for me, like the most urgent thing that we can get to right now is that common alignment on measurement across the core channels. Because again, it's not going to be perfect. We have to align on what we're going to call the taxonomy. Like how deep in the channels we're going to go to start. We have to align on where we want to start and stop. Because from a media agency perspective, we can only influence really up until the point where the consumer sees the ad. But all of a sudden, if we can align on this methodology, it also helps all of our partners because now they're going to be more informed too about what triggers are driving carbon emissions. A lot of companies are trying to figure it out for themselves. And within our space, a lot of operations are fairly similar. Now, obviously, there's going to be different inputs and outputs, but the steps to develop ads, they do have sort of common components that you can standardize. So I think that for us to we can make meaningful impact quickly if we get to that place where we are all aligned on understanding what the factors are that are contributing. And I think that's been the hardest part to date.
Martin, you talked a little bit about urgency when it comes to this, working with trade bodies and stuff, and we have, 4 of the largest media agencies up here on stage. So what's your timeline? I'm going to put a little bit of pressure on you. You guys are talking about, wanting to quickly put solutions in place. So what does that mean to you guys?
I mean, we've committed to net zero across our media supply chain by 2030, or 50% reduction across our media supply chain by 2030. Net zero across scope 1 and scope 2 by 2025. So we've committed to tackling the media problem. We've taken steps in that process, and we're certainly moving ahead right now independently with the methodology that we've proposed because we don't have much else to bounce against. But we're hopeful that we're hopeful that very soon, and maybe after this session, considering we're all sitting on the stage, we can start making some more rapid advancements as an industry to just say, yes, this is how we want to start to approach measuring this channel, and these are the factors that we need. Because ultimately, Yale, to your point before, it's the data signals that just need to be consistent and how we go to these partners, and then our secret sauce can be our secret sauce. But anyway, so we've committed to 2030.
So at Horizon Media, we have not communicated yet, but we are working on, we have very aggressive objectives. I think everybody has been very impacted this morning by the first presentation and Noel did from Red Cross. To keep the world, in a safe place, we have to reduce carbon emissions by 55%, in 10 years. So definitely our objective will be outperforming that line of 50% reduction in 10 years, probably in less than that, and obviously being net zero in about 10 years. However, to Martin's point, right? Offset is the way to start, right? It's happening today. We are working with Sharethrough. We are working with the whole programmatic ecosystem. We are working with also partners, also social media, etc., to start doing that offset and have a real strategy and a real accounting strategy actually on carbon credits, right? But at the same time, we are also starting working on those more strategic initiatives, the long-term initiatives that you were mentioning, Yale. And really, our approach here is to say, hey, what have the Walmart and the Target of the world have done in the 80s and the 90s to reduce supply chain from the farm to table approach, like from directly from a manufacturing firm to a consumer in a store. What can we do? Exactly the same. Having less transports, lighter product, less transformation, and try to see how it applies to the supply chain in the digital world. For example, one technology we are using today, I think everybody here is familiar with Snowflake, right? Where the data is just does not travel. The data is just somewhere on the cloud, and you just serve it. So that's a way for us to reduce our data processing and our data storage. So there are many ways we are working on right now to start reducing that real estate, I would say, and at the same time that we have that offset, which will help to get over the hump.
This is where we can be competitive, right? We need to set the more ambitious and aggressive goals. We do not currently have a net zero target for media. And transparently, we have not been able to define that because we need the data to define how we're measuring and get an accurate picture of where that baseline is. Next week, we are hosting our own sustainability forum for clients at Mediabrands, where we'll be making some announcements that are exciting as it relates to programmatic. However, I will say, we will actively be working towards a really aggressive target. And I would love it if we could all align on a target to push the industry forward together once we get that measurement in place.
Yeah, I think it's also, Publicis has made the right commitments. We've committed to the net zero, net reduction by 50%, 2030, 2040, zero. We've made commitments to add net zero. We've made commitments to WFA and GARM. We're involved in so many different industry orgs. It's just like a full schedule to try to manage how we work across that. But I think it's like sort of this groundswell of coming to these conferences, and this is the urgency is getting everyone together to help pass along the information to, it's not just the commitment to it, it's the activity and the action behind it that makes it everyone passionate about this. And when you get one person involved, you get another 10 people involved. Because it's not just caring about it's your planet, it's your environment, it's what you do, but it also impacts your family, it impacts your friends. So it's a commitment not only to your company, but it's a commitment to everyone here. So it's a really interesting topic to have, what is your commitment as an organization? But everyone rallies behind a commitment, and other places like viewability, and we commit to this. But when it comes to actually committing to the planet and doing something, sure, you actually stand behind it and you start to take action and you start to do something about it. And these are the perfect type of events to galvanize that interest across an industry to actually take action.
Looking a little bit more at the micro ways that you can take action, what are some things that you'd need from your partners in the supply chain that could help with this?
I think it's really important to share, right? Share your data. We work with Scope 3. We would ask all of our partners that are working with us that they avail that data to them so that we can work towards a more accurate picture of emissions at a very granular impression level data. That's critical, is sharing, collaborating, and providing a very transparent portrait of emissions. That to me, it's nuanced, but it's really, really critical, is that we get that data.
We're working with a couple of our partners. I see one of them in the room that I will not name. But we are, right now, for us at least, because we have worked to develop something to kind of give to everyone to react, we're now in the process of working with our partners to see if that's something that they also are comfortable to react to. So we're trying to move in that path in the same way. And the partners that we're working with are some big partners, and it's complicated. So we're going through sustainability and data science reviews of our methodologies. There have been discussions of, do we need to go to sort of an independent regulatory body, not a trade body here, but an actual sustainability expert that can look at the methodology and validate it from what the Big Four consultancy developed. in partnership. So right now we're in this stage where our partners have made commitments to us to give us sustainability data in certain markets, and we're working with them now to see if the RFI we've sort of created is something that is viable for them and how much work it will take in absence of sort of this unification of that one approach for starting. So I think right now for our partners, the transparency where it is, I mean, whenever anyone claims that your solution is clean, I really want to understand that methodology. For everyone that's just operating business as usual, it's about understanding, okay, here's how we're thinking about processing this, or here's how we're thinking about trying to figure out to measure it, or how to work with the industry to kind of move in this direction. Do you think that this is feasible? So that's kind of where we are right now, is more of still the feedback loop and working with them, because we don't want this to become, again, like, not just not pre-competitive, we also don't want this to become something that is like, ugh, here we go again. We really want this to be a collaborative effort with everyone, including our partners.
I just want to react very quickly to Krystal, sorry. But I completely relate to that, right? And I'm relatively new to the industry, and I was surprised at the beginning how fragmented it is. It's crazy.
Yes.
I think there was like 50 ad tech in 2012, and now they're like 850. So, and what I see
In one
is,
market.
Yeah, it's in one market, just in the US, right? I mean, most of them are global, but it's really incredible. So really, that working with partners is a big deal, and those partners are very different than probably that they were years ago. I mean, when I joined the industry, we were talking about DSP. That was your only interaction with the ecosystem, right? With the programmatic ecosystem. Today, we are entertainment. We are talking with supply side. We are talking with publishers, and engaging all those people. I mean, is a completely different approach, because it's really having that, let's say, comprehensive view of the whole supply chain to work together and optimize. It doesn't mean like reducing people. Totally the opposite. It's taking the energy of everyone to optimize individually and come up to something which is big.
Yeah. Almost 2 years ago, we went on a journey to actually measure brand integrity, and part of that is just sustainability within like partner and ecosystem, and so that became a framework for us to understand like how to work more strategically with partners, and part of that framework was mapping brand integrity alongside performance metrics. And because we understood that we can't just start to measure things in a vacuum, and partners need to be measured on their performance as well as new dimensions around how sustainable they are, how they work on DE&I, et cetera, so that you uncover like how these metrics interact and harmonize across one another. So it's a really interesting way to introduce a framework for clients that makes them feel more comfortable with actually diving into sustainability, because then you can actually start to see performance next to sustainable metrics in a way that actually helps a brand respond to their CEO about responsible marketing and responsible business. And I think the proof point in how you actually get to responsible marketing, responsible business is actually what helps to drive clients to do the right thing in the industry, especially in the advertising industry, where it's very data-driven to get to the right place. So that type of insights and information is immensely helpful for brands.
That's gold, what you've just said, though. That is the critical unlock. When we can actually prove that by being more sustainable, you're actually yielding a higher ROI for your marketers. We're in a capitalist society, as Bryan mentioned. I mean, this is where market dynamics will motivate us to do the right thing that's going to be more profitable. And guess what? We're proving that out. We actually have the data, and we're excited to publish some research that the Magna Media Trials team have recently, that will be published next week, that speaks to exactly that, where we are able to really show that correlation between positive outcomes for marketers and also sustainability. So that's exciting.
Sorry, I just saw that the time went up, I think, of how much time we have now.
Yale's watching the clock.
I didn't even notice there was a clock down there.
You know, and I love that point too, because I think a few years ago, in sort of a parallel universe, we like embarked on the data ethics work that we were doing, and there were these really interesting conversations, which was like, yeah, we can build this tool, and yeah, we can operationalize it for your business, but are you actually going to make, if you find out that the data is, creepy or unethical, like it feels weird,
It is.
are you going to use it in media still if it drives huge performance? And it was this really interesting dialogue with clients, and we have some clients that just believe so deeply in it, and they set standards, and they worked through how to find sort of similar performance or to make sure they weren't totally, because we're not buying advertising to not grow our businesses, so you have to drive growth. But at least for digital, it feels like there's a clear path to some easy things, and Bryan, I'm sure, talked about this. I'm sorry I missed part of your panel, Bryan. But it's like we've all talked about supply side optimization because it's good for more dollars to the publishers and more working media for the advertisers. And it's also good for the environment because it's less hops and less calls to different servers. And I think there are things that that's just like one of those ones where logically, it feels like we'll vet it out, but it feels like it's an all-win, all-around solution. So,
No brainer.
yeah. Thank you.
So I think, we talked a lot, just to add just on what you said, Krystal, but we talked about a lot about data, right? And I think the way that industry works today is all around data. And that's why we measure our success, and how we build our audiences to target, etc. And we just have to add another layer, which is the sustainability layer, and that's part of our metrics. That's how we let's say, monetize also our services for our clients, and how we measure our success, right? That's just another way, as DEI or any other parameter, which also are elements of sustainability.
And that becomes where we talk about pre-competitive, and then we talk about where we can differentiate, how we operationalize it, and how we take this common data sets and build bespoke solutions or build our own paths to figuring this out. That's where we can be competitive, but it can't be on the framework for measuring it.
Were there any unforeseen hurdles when it came to really launching into the sustainability aspect, and how exactly did you overcome them?
I don't know if it's a hurdle. I think for me, one of the getting through the sort of measurement piece, which we've been transparent about, that we worked with a consultant, I think actually even operationalizing it in its current form has been a hurdle. Even keeping up with the demand that's coming in for the amount of questions and how much client interest there is. Like we have our client coalition, so our version of a sustainability forum, and it could be a full-time job actually, just kind of running that program and working through that, because there's so much interest, and there's so I think the hard part right now is actually keeping up with the demand of educating our own teams, operationalizing, and making sure everyone understands what we're talking about when we talk about this topic, making sure they know our perspectives on things like reductions versus offsetting, and where we want to go, and the types of questions we want to ask vendors, and how do we think about this for clients. For me, that's been the hardest part. Is it's step one, identifying the problem, but step two, figuring out how to start to transform your business, start to work with your partners to transform their businesses. That's been the hurdle, but overcoming it because people are really passionate about it. So we have like over 200 hand raisers across our organization that are just championing this, just because they're passionate about it. So that's been the beauty in it, I think, is like people are really interested in trying to figure out how to solve this.
I think one of the challenges that we face is also at the marketer side, and even within our agency is there are people who are passionate about it, but then who's actually the stakeholder, who's actually the sustainability officer, where do they have budget to actually enact measurement? Do they have, they lean into the programmatic teams and connecting those dots in terms of the collaboration. You start to see like the difference between like how a CMO works alongside other C-suite, and you can actually start to see like, especially where in Europe, where there's regulation and like they actually have targets on their heads, or fine potential, like, and you see interactions differently to collaborate. I think we're all trying to make sure that the pathway to success is also the pathway to success for like performance and building a brand. And so I think that you can connect even within our own organizations, our clients' organizations, help connect the right stakeholders. I think that's part of the pathway to success is who is identifying the right stakeholders and not just the ones who are eager to work on it, but passionate about, like, I am a decision maker, I can help enact this, I can help fund this, because funding it is actually funding efficiencies and better business practices.
We found that it's a partnership in most of our brand sides, like to your point. Our media leads don't know a ton about sustainability. Some of them are more passionate than others, but they're learning. And our sustainability leads on our marketer sides don't really actually always know a lot about the media side of the house. They're more concerned about sustainable soil or, all of these other things that are falling in that are really their core scope 1, 2, 3 drivers. So that's been a big, I think, opportunity too, is like how you start to bring them together. Because you're right, it's not one individual stakeholder. You can't sell in a sustainability solution that the chief sustainability officer doesn't agree with. You'll fail at some point. So it's, yeah.
So just one thing, and I think the word passion has been used a few times here. And I think it's one of the few subjects I have ever seen in all my career where passion overtakes business outcomes. And you mentioned like 200 people raising their hands. We have the same with them at Horizon Media. People want to talk about it. And each time we put that subject on the table, say, wow, this is great, let's talk about it. Clients say, yeah, let's talk about it. There is like so much passion about it. Say, we can actually do something. Yeah, we can do something. We can tomorrow, we can start. And this is incredible, the energy it generates, right? Now, the challenge, because there is one challenge, is you have to convert this into business outcomes. And it's very difficult to go to, in my case, to exec, and say, okay, I need a few $1,000s, right, to dedicate people's time, because I think people's time is money. I know many people don't know the correlation. But yeah, people's time is money, and we have to convince that this is actually for good, because there is a tangible business outcomes. Today, it's impossible to, you mentioned Yale earlier, and you mentioned RFI, RFPs. I've not seen recently an RFI with no sustainability questions. Not any. 100% of them. So we need to have a point of view. And this is part of our business, and this is what we have to do with that education and that communication around it. In our case, it's not a secret, but we have built a playbook, which is pretty nice actually, with a nice, similar to what you guys have done, and everybody has access to it, and they have materials and stuff like this, so they actually can educate themselves, and the brands can go to their clients with the right messaging. That's one example of things we can do, and I think, this is cool.
I'm just going to echo it. Education, number one hurdle, right? And I love what you said about the client sort of saying, well, this is not even on my radar. And we're sort of, actually, did you know there's this incredible impact that we can have with media and advertising and reducing emissions? So there's often a light bulb with our procurement teams that goes off and they go, golly, that's exciting. So education, huge. Passion, yes. So we all have, and we need to, by the way, just get all of our champions together and change the world, which we are. But I think that's the thing is corralling that passion and educating your people so that they can be the champions to implement. We got several Mediabrands folks in the audience today who are these amazing, passionate people that are taking it on as an additional layer to their existing work. So we're integrating sustainability into every element of our business, and we're making everybody, we're all probably doing the same thing in all of our companies. We're making everybody a sustainability champion ultimately at our companies. That's exciting.
No, we're almost out of time, but I feel like it wouldn't be fair without asking this question. People that are very passionate about climate are often very critical of large corporations, large companies who are doing this work, who are claiming that they want to be sustainable, they want to reach net zero. So how do you deal with those criticisms if they're leveled at you from clients, activists, et cetera?
I think we're just standing behind the radical transparency of the work we're doing. When I hear, because we will hear sometimes things like, well, it's the GroupM standard, and it upsets me a little bit. I don't want it to be called the GroupM standard, and nobody does. We just needed a measurement methodology. We needed something to start from. We couldn't find anything that was consistent across the channels that had common boundaries. So we developed it, and then we gave it to everyone. So anyone can have it. Yeah. And we've been asking people to react to it. So we've heard some things, we've definitely gotten some feedback. It's been actually quite few and far between, I'll be honest. But then usually the next question is, well, can you respond to the methodology? Can you help us? Tell us what you would do differently, and we never hear anything again. So I think for us, it's just we're just standing behind the science-based targets initiatives and the approaches that we're taking, and being, as I said, science-led, radically transparent, pre-competitive, and open to feedback, and that's how we're navigating it.
So I would just add something here. I think we are in the brands business, right? We're in the reputational business. So we can't do anything without facts. Before the fact, right? It has to be the fact and then the communication. So I think collectively the industry has been relatively reasonable in comparison to other industries. Hey, some airlines saying we are carbon neutral. A friend of mine said, let's travel to that place with that company because it's carbon neutral. I will not say any name, but that's a little bit maybe an overstatement, right? So we are, I think the industry has been very reasonable. I don't think I've seen any too much issues with greenwashing. I know this is a concern from our CEO, so he said, calm down on sustainability, show me the results, and then we will see what we do in terms of communicating. And this is also, we protect that industry, our brands, because we all have great brands to protect, and also the brands of our clients, which is what we do for a living. This is helping them being better at what they do.
I think the activists need a seat at the table too, to your point. I mean, I think we need to all ensure that voices are heard. We respect the opinions of those that are passionate about this topic and that are educated on this topic, but absolutely transparency, I love that, radical transparency, and the idea that we must take a stand and we can't be green hushed on this topic. I think that's really something that's a significant risk that we have in our industry, is we should celebrate and commend the good work so that we can continue to sort of promote that and encourage others to adopt sustainable business practices.
I think freedom of speech is a privilege that we sometimes take for granted, especially as us as Americans. Maybe not everyone in this room, but in a civilized society, we really need to have voices to help us to understand where innovation comes from. And you know what? Sometimes the innovation actually doesn't come from a 60-year-old CEO or whoever that is. It actually comes from a younger generation. And that's the fascinating thing about sustainability, is that you can start to see experts, but people are passionate about it and get really educated about it and can actually impact change in a meaningful way. And they're everyone. It's like the example of a 20-year-old kid walking into a Bentley dealership and they can actually buy the car. You never know who's actually behind the information or what they're actually going to be able to contribute. Drastic example, but I think it's an interesting way to start to think about it. But ultimately, you're right. I think the data is behind it, supports how marketers are going to react, and how you translate responsible marketing to responsible business.
All right. Well, we're just about out of time. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys learned something.
Thank you.